I mean, if you think about it, if you're not able to get yourself dressed, if you're not able to brush your own teeth, if you're not able to even get, yourself ready or like your food ready for the day, that's really hard. So, it's very important that those things are addressed. And in kids, it's very important that we help them build the skills to be able to do those things so that they're independent.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Therapy Unmasked. Today, here at Ability Innovations, I am joined by Aaron here. He is an occupational therapist, and he's also our clinic regional director. Is that the title that we have? So he kind of oversees all of our different clinics, the therapists in all of those clinics. So he's a very seasoned therapist. And you had your start in the school district, right?
Correct. Yeah. So I started in the school district, and then shortly after starting there, I moved here. So
do you have like a similar story to Nick about because Nick always talks about how he was in the school districts. He felt like he wasn't really doing as much as he could have. And so that's why he started doing private therapy. Do you have like a similar experience?
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, I did some field work in like private practice, kind of different, different private practices with pediatrics. So I knew that that's kind of the area I wanted to go in, but I started in the school district. That was a job that was open, and I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. So I tried it out. I do feel like, there was a couple things that played into, me switching back to private practice. One of them being, it felt like I couldn't really work on some of the things I wanted to work on with the kids, or like there were some kids who maybe didn't qualify in the school because of, it's different things that they have to qualify to be able to get services in school. I feel like outside of the school setting, they probably would have qualified, but inside the school setting, they weren't qualifying for OT services, but they definitely needed it. So part of that to me was like, I want to be able to offer services to the kids who need it and make sure they're getting all the help they need.
Aaron also teaches. We've done a course with Aaron on activities of daily living, which you can buy separately or you can buy as part of our entire occupational therapy course. And I'll have that all linked down below. But in that course, Aaron really talks about what different activities of daily living are, what those skills are, and how we can help kids with that. So transitioning from like being in the schools to doing private practice, was activities of daily living something you always kind of focused on as an OT, or is it because it seems to be something you're kind of like specialized in?
Activities of daily living is, something that pretty much every OT does and works with. When I was in school, one of my field works that we did a lot with activities of daily living it was for older people. But then with my capstone project, I kind of got to look at it a little bit more in depth with pediatric, specifically with the pediatric stroke population. So my capstone project was related to that, but a lot of the stuff that the stroke affects is their activities of daily living. Yeah. So, it's definitely an area I've always kind of worked on OT. It's one of like the main areas of OT. It's very important, I guess. Like most OTs will work on it because it's an area that's very, if you think about it, if you're not able to get yourself dressed, if you're not able to brush your own teeth, if you're not able to even get, yourself ready or like your food ready for the day, that's really hard. So, it's very important that those things are addressed. And in kids, it's very important that we help them build the skills to be able to do those things so that they're independent, because, if they're not independent, then it's a lot of work on the parents, and building independence can really help those children.
And when you think of even the title occupational therapist, right? Occupation being activities or situations that people do every single day, right? And activities of daily living, those are our occupations, right? That we do. So for kids, what are some of like the most common activities of daily living that you've worked with here at the clinic?
Kind of like you said, activities of daily living can mean, it's a lot of activities we do. Oftentimes when we think of activities of daily living as an OT, we're thinking of things like getting dressed, tying shoes, brushing teeth, getting ready for the day, eating. So a lot of those are like the common ones we'll work on, especially like one of the most common reasons why kids have difficulty with activities of daily living is their ability to focus, their ability to problem solve, their ability to be able to sequence like the activities, like, okay, what's my first step? What's my second step? And remembering all those steps. And, sometimes it's just remembering to even do those activities. Most commonly, it's probably helping kids in those areas, like how to problem solve, how to sequence, how to remember your activities of daily living, how to remember how to do, when to do it, how to do it, those kind of things.
I like how you brought up like something as simple as like learning to tie a shoe. So Shawnee is a CODA, which is an occupational therapy assistant over at our Ogden clinic. And she's been working with this kid for a long time. And he finally learned how to tie his shoes all by himself. And so she baked him a cake. And so I have a picture of Shawnee with this kid she's working with, and she made him this double layered cake as a way to say thank you. So I thought it was really funny. And so along that lines, though, to me and you, these tasks are not very complicated, right?
Yeah.
Learning to shower correctly, brushing our teeth, doing our shoes, even just walking around, using our hands, all of these things are things that someone who's neurotypical probably doesn't think twice about. But our clientele and a lot of the kids that come to this clinic, they really struggle with some of these activities. And for so many of them, they're in this habilitative state where they're learning how to do these things for the first time. They're not relearning something that they lost, but this is their first time learning how to tie a shoe. And they might be 12 years old, because they've got some delayed things. So could you speak to that a little bit about specific caseloads? And you don't have to name names or anything, but are there some examples of kids you've worked with that you've been able to see change?
Yeah. So, there's definitely kids who, it's their first time learning it. And I've had kids that, like I was kind of saying, some of their difficulties were learning how to sequence it. I've got to put my shirt on first, or I've got to put my underwear on first before I put on my pants instead of my pants, or I've got to put my socks before my shoes. But also just remembering all the steps. Sometimes some of the kids I've worked with, what's difficult for them is remembering all of the steps that are involved in the process. Because for us, it's very second nature. We don't even have to think about it. I pull my shirt on, I pull my underwear on, I pull my pants up, I put my socks on, my shoes on. But for a kid who's maybe has difficulty with focus and attention, or a kid who maybe has difficulty with memory, for them, it's a lot harder. But also I've had kids I've worked with where, I was saying, I've worked with kids who have had a stroke, or who maybe have had some event happen that actually caused them to have difficulty doing something they were doing before. So, I can think of one kid specifically. He was, I want to say he was about 12 to 13 years old. I can't remember exact age, but he had a stroke around 10 to 11 years old. And he was really big into playing sports and stuff. He even had difficulty just doing things like getting ready and tying his shoes again. So it was relearning. And, with a stroke, it affected one of his sides of his body. So it was even harder because the one side wasn't functioning as it was before. And so it was kind of helping him, in a way, it's helping him relearn, but it's also almost in a way helping him build new neural pathways, or new, understanding of how to use it now that he has a side that maybe is affected due to the stroke. So lots of opportunities that I've had working with kids with different areas of activities of daily living, from kids who are learning it for the first time, and some kids who are probably relearning it due to some sort of thing like a stroke or something like that.
In your course that you've taught, and in a blog that you've recently written about activities of daily living, you discuss so going along with sequencing and doing step by step, you discuss something called a visual schedule or like a visual routine. Do you maybe want to talk to what that is?
Yeah, so visual schedule, I mean, it can look a lot of different ways. Depends on the kid, depends on their age. I think I referenced it in my course, but I don't remember for sure. But one of the most important things about visual schedules is making sure the kid's involved in making it, because if they're not involved, then they're less likely to utilize that visual schedule. So like you could go online and you can find a visual schedule and just print it off. It may not be as successful as if you're like, okay, I like this idea. Let's maybe get on like Canva, or, there's lots of other things out there that you can edit files and stuff like that and create your own. Maybe instead of like it looking like what everyone else's look like, maybe we add in like Batman and Superman theme kind of stuff, or maybe we add in like Paw Patrol, like any of those things that maybe might motivate the kid to have it. For example, I have one kid who really had difficulty with doing all the activities of daily living, remembering to do things like even just like he would go to the bathroom, but he'd forget to wipe and flush and wash his hands and stuff like that. And he had difficulty remembering all the steps of brushing his teeth. Like, what do I do first? How do I get my toothbrush ready to brush my teeth? And he really was into sharks. And so we kind of just like together, him and I, we sat down. He was like 8 years old. Him and I sat down and we just got on like Canva and like, okay, we're going to, here's our steps to doing it. Let's see if we can find a shark that looks like he's, sitting on the potty. Right. Let's see if we can find a shark that looks like he's wiping his bum. And so we kind of like played around with it and like made it look like, here's all the steps and the shark's doing the steps. And he really liked that. And mom, within a few weeks was like, he's actually remembering to do all these things. He's getting his activities done. And she was like, it was really motivating to him because he was seeing the sharks doing it. And, we even made a sign that he hung up on next to the bath, like to the toilet that said, don't forget to flush. And it had a shark on it, flushing the toilet. So I think that's one of the most important things with visual schedules is get your child involved in choosing what's on their visual schedule and help them, problem solve too. Because some kids, like maybe they don't need the task broken down as much. Maybe they only need it broken down to like 3 steps. Maybe some kids need it broken down into like, lots of steps. Like, it just depends on the kid. And I mean, if you're working with an OT, it's a great opportunity to have your OT help you design a visual schedule because we do that often. So, if you're not with an OT, I mean, definitely, you can still make one for sure. Just make sure that you involve the child in the process of making it.
Right. I mean, because it is a schedule for them, right? So you want them to be interested in what they're doing. Yeah. One last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap things up here is what are some of like the more common disabilities that we see that maybe require a little more attention when it comes to activities of daily living? Like you mentioned, stroke victims, for example, that's a big one because they've lost the ability to use half their body, like half one side of their body, and they have to relearn how to do stuff. But are there any other like disabilities that are common that maybe?
Pretty much any kid could have difficulty. Commonly, kids with like autism, you'll see, some difficulty with activities of daily living. Oftentimes it's related to some of the other skills that, maybe they have deficits in. But, like kids with sensory processing difficulties, there's a lot of like sensory input that happens during activities of daily living, especially like toothbrushing or hand washing. That's the common one. ADHD, common because the common kids that have difficulty with activities of daily living because, like I was saying, sometimes they don't have the focus or the attention or the memory. And a lot of that, kids who have ADHD have difficulties with those areas. And so they might struggle with activities of daily living. I mean, kids with cerebral palsy, it's similar to like a stroke. They have one side that's affected, and oftentimes they might have difficulty with an activity of daily living because of that. I have kids who don't necessarily have like a diagnosis that have difficulties with activities of daily living.
Which is very broad, is what it sounds like.
It's very broad. A lot of kids, struggle with it. More than you would think.
Yeah, that's interesting. What about OCD?
Yeah, I mean, I specifically haven't worked with any kids who have had diagnosis of OCD, so I don't know for sure. I mean, I could see where a lot of the things that are related to OCD can cause difficulty with activities of daily living.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time today, Aaron, to sit down with me and go over this. Aaron recently published a blog all about activities of daily living, and it was very like in depth and detailed. I mean, it's like 4 pages long. You did a really good job on it. So I'll link that down below, and I highly encourage you to go read through it because it even talks about something we didn't really have a time to get into, which is where your child should be at, like with milestones at what age. And so it starts at infancy, goes into like preschool, elementary school, adolescence, and then by being a late teenager and an adult, like where your child should be. And it kind of breaks all that down, which I think is very helpful, especially because as we just discussed, everything from OCD to ADHD to just a generalized like autism diagnosis, like all of these things can affect activities of daily living. So it's just important to pay attention to your child, where they're at, what milestones you maybe think they're missing. And if you have any questions, just bring them in for an evaluation. We have really strict tests and our therapists are highly trained and skilled to help you understand what milestones your child might be missing. Do you have anything you would like to finish off with when it comes to activities of daily living before I let you go?
Definitely take a look at the blog and, check out like, is my child where they should be at compared to like same age peers? There's definitely lots of resources out there too. So if you're, if you feel like the blog maybe doesn't give you enough information to find out like if they're on the right track, there's other resources out there to see if they're on the right track for those activities of daily living. If you have any concerns, definitely reach out to an occupational therapist. We can definitely evaluate those areas and we can determine what areas may be causing it. Because we didn't get very much into it either. But there's so much that goes into completing an activity of daily living that, it may just be one area. It may be the sensory processing, it may be the sequencing and executive functioning skills. And it could be, it could just be skills that maybe once we refine those skills, then they can be successful in activities of daily living.
Well, again, special thanks to Aaron for joining us. I know he's a super busy guy now, so I appreciate every chance I get to sit down and talk with him. As always, Therapy Unmasked is brought to you by Ability Innovations and Children in Motion, therapy clinics here in Utah that help kids with situations like this that we just talked about. Every single day we offer physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. If you'd like to support this podcast and the people here even more, feel free to check out therapy-unmasked.com for a list of our courses. We also have free resources on there. And right now, if you use the code FREETHERAPY, all one word, all caps, you can get your first month of Therapy Unmasked for free. Aaron, thank you so much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode of Therapy Unmasked. Goodbye.